Bellator MMA returns to San Jose Friday, April 15th. It's a battle for the belt. When reigning champion Vadim Nemkov faces Corey Overtime Anderson for the world title and $1 million in the light heavyweight World Grand Prix final. Don't miss Nemkov versus Anderson.
Round and pound!
In a battle for light heavyweight supremacy and a whole lot of cash. Friday, April 15th at the SAP Center. For tickets, go to Ticketmaster.com.
Spring it on with 40 to 70% off almost everything at Gap Factory and GapFactory.com. Matching styles for the family are on sale too. Shop it all through April 12th.
This is Donald Parham of the LA Chargers, and you're listening to Chargers Unleashed, part of the LA Football Network. Stay jiggy.
Welcome to another episode of Chargers Unleashed. Jake Hefner and Dan Wolkenstein here with you from the LA Football Network. Today's show, of course, being brought to you by Charger Bolt Family, Brewery X in Anaheim, and UFC Fit in Temecula. Dan Wolkenstein. It is a pleasure, sir, to be talking to you on this Monday, September 13th, 2021. But more importantly, as Dan loves to gush about it whenever it comes around, and last year there weren't too many of these days, but it is a Victory Monday, the first Victory Monday of the 2021 Chargers NFL season. Dan, let's hear it. Go. I know you're hyped.
It is a Victory Monday! We get to talk about a win. The Chargers are undefeated in 2021. Brandon Staley gets his first victory on the birthday of his late mother, which was so cool to see in the press conference when they talked about it. Justin Herbert balled out. Brandon Staley's defensive scheme. Hello. Welcome back, Los Angeles Chargers. It is a new era. And Jake, probably my favorite part of the whole damn thing, Chargers put the hammer down at the end of the game, given all of the resiliency they had to endure because of the terrible officiating, horrible penalties. It seemed like everyone was going against them, but Chargers found a way to get the W and start off the season 1-0, which was so important given our next game. 1-0, baby. 1-0. Jake's optimistic take during the pregame was for good, as he was correct. How did it feel?
Hey, I'm just happy that Vizcaino went out and made every single kick that he attempted. I mean, you gotta be happy about that. Not once did I not hold my breath during every single one of those. It didn't matter if it ended up being the extra point or not. You know that every single one of Chargers fandom was collectively holding their breaths and was either ready to cheer in, in joy, or about ready to put their fist through a television in anger if things would have gone a different direction. So, yeah, I mean, it was fantastic. I got to say, that first drive of the game, you couldn't have scripted a better way to start that game. Given every little criticism that the Chargers were getting, whether it was 4 new offensive linemen, didn't have much time to gel during, preseason because of Brian Bulaga being out for precautionary reasons, other guys not performing as well as we may have hoped. Obviously, Rashawn Slater ended up being just as advertised. We'll get to that in a second. But that on top of Justin Herbert not playing in the preseason, Justin Herbert has proven that he doesn't need a preseason at all. He didn't have one in 2020. He didn't have one in 2021. I think he's going to be just fine. But to come out and put a opening drive together like that, first off, when they scored, I said, I can't remember the last time that the Chargers scored on their opening possession. That was one thing.
That easily.
It looked easy. That was what was crazy about it. And of course, the game came a little bit more down to earth as it went on. But what a statement for Brandon Staley and this offense. definitely was the tone setter for what they were going to be doing throughout the game with that aggressive mindset on offense.
Yeah, we're going to get into a ton of kind of a recap of kind of what went right, what went wrong throughout the game. We're also going to get into kind of like the keys to victory that I think both of us saw. And we're also going to get into, I think, Jake, this is probably one of the things probably Chargers fans are most excited about right now, is how different this team feels. And there are so many ways you could take that, from the coaches to the players to the play calling to the situations. But there were so many demons, it felt like, that were overcome in one game for both the players and the coaches and for the fans that they had to endure. And so the last part of this will just be like what this feels like. Because I think this is a kind of a foreign feeling for all of us. Because, Jake, you and I were talking during the game, and I want to say it was like late third quarter, early fourth quarter. Like your hopes were pretty low. You were not feeling too good about this.
I was watching the Achilles heel of what I've been criticizing for this team, and that I was nervous about for this team. The interior defensive line, Antonio Gibson, and that running game of the Washington football team started to get it going. We
tried telling Kyler Fackrell. We tried telling him.
Hey, they started controlling the tempo a little bit, and I just thought, I'm like, okay, this is starting to look a little too familiar. I don't like where this is headed. What's that old adage? Good teams find ways to win ugly games. I wasn't surprised that it was as close as it was, but there were a lot of aspects in it that just made it ugly, whether it was the officiating, boneheaded penalties, dropped passes. I mean, stuff that you don't see happen in the same game, like mistakes from Joey Bosa or dropped passes from Keenan Allen. Okay, one of those in one game and one of those in another game, but not in the same game. And I don't know, Justin Herbert, I think, had 7 drops in the same game. So to overcome that, to overcome some of the defensive mistakes on top of the bad officiating, this is a game that if you wrote that out on paper to me before I saw the box score, I would have already told you that the Chargers will probably end up losing that game if you said that all those elements were somehow in the game. I probably would have leaned more toward the Chargers losing it because historically they do.
All the time.
Going back to that feeling different thing that we've been saying this entire offseason, yeah, it felt different. And it was good to see the resilience that was in this team for them to fight to the bitter end and stay aggressive, especially in the fourth quarter. Didn't go to the familiar conservative approach that we have really just never want to see again. But you get my point.
Yep. Look, all right, so we're going to get into kind of the stars of this game. So I think we should try to dwindle it down to 3, although we could say there are 15 stars of this game. But before we get into that, quick recap. Chargers go up 7-0. Then a whole bunch of muddy stuff happens, including Ryan Fitzpatrick gets lit up by Uchenna Nwosu. He gets injured. Tyler Henneke comes back in. We've got field goals being made. We got a long field goal being missed by them, which weirdly didn't happen to us, which is odd. Terrible officiating and blown calls in the middle, whether it was a stupid fumble that Justin Herbert threw in the end zone, which was not a fumble. I don't know what drugs they were smoking.
I don't know what a pass is anymore. Someone tell me what a pass is, please.
When I saw that, I was like, are you serious? Like, every player on the field was like, nah, okay, guess we'll go for another play. And like all of a sudden you go back from review, it's like, and it's not our ball. Wow. Justin Herbert literally had one bad decision the entire game, and that turned into an interception. But he came back from that. Washington football team fumbles after Asante Samuel and Kyzir White light up Antonio Gibson on the goal line to get the ball back. Chargers basically take over from there. Chargers score to go up 1 score. And then get the ball back, Jake, and take and suffocate the next 6 minutes, roughly, off of the clock. Ice it, victory formation, bye-bye, says Keenan Allen. And Chargers win 20-16. A bit of a nail-biter for quite some time in that third quarter, early fourth quarter. But when the Chargers needed it, and Staley talks about it in the press conference afterwards, when you had to have it, when you've got a guy that everyone knows it's going to, and you still can't stop it, you got talent. And Keenan Allen, although he dropped an early pass, and we'll talk about drops later, Keenan Allen was everything for this team. So was Mike Williams. So was Jared Cook. And Justin Herbert, you talked about how good he looked. Jake, I want to say his stat line for a sec. I think I posted this earlier today. Pretty good stat line. 31 for 47, 340 yards roughly, a touchdown and a pick. Not bad. And then I went through and went back and watched all the throws, Jake. 4 of the throws that he actually threw. So 4 of the 47 throws were misses. I'll give him that. One of those was the interception. He threw 2 away. 1 got batted at the line. And then there were 9 balls that were either drops or like the receiver should have caught it, i.e. like the one that hit Guyton in the head. Like you should have caught that. And there was one that was a diving attempt by Keenan Allen that hit him in the hand. And if you ask Keenan Allen, he should catch that. So Justin Herbert could have had 450 yards and 4 touchdowns, no problem in this game. So if you watch the eye test, go back and watch the misses that he has. And for folks who are watching or listening, go to my Twitter handle. I highlighted some of the quote-unquote incompletions. The dude was dropping dimes. One of the best games I have seen him have against arguably the stiffest defensive line he will face all season long.
Yeah. How about this, Dan? Remember we were talking about pregame. You asked me the question on who I thought was going to be controlling the time of possession during this game. And I figured that given the run game of Washington, I felt that they were going to have more success than us in controlling the clock. The Chargers put together 5 drives of 10 plays or more throughout this game. The shortest drive of these was 5 minutes and 46 seconds. They had an 18-play drive toward the end of this game, which is nuts. It's a shame that that ended up only resulting in a field goal. But these were the things that the Chargers never were able to do consistently in the past. Control the pace of the game. The third down percentage wins that the Chargers got during this game was something absolutely ridiculous. What was that? I think it was like 14 of 19 the Chargers were on third down, which is absolutely ridiculous. And
73% as a team for third down conversions for the Chargers.
And I think Justin Herbert's stat line, much like he was doing last year on third down, I think it was around like 106. I think it was like 166 yards that he passed for while on third down.
160 yards, 13 for 16, and 11 first downs.
Thank you. Those are just insane numbers to put up. And to do that with a new head coach, it's a statement. It really is. That should be the identity of this football team when you have the type of talent that you do. And yeah, I mean, you can't knock it. It's a tremendous winning formula. It sounds like it should be one of the simplest things for people to follow. But when you do it in the way that the Chargers did yesterday, in truth, the game should have been more like 40-16. But you're still going up against a stout defense.
Yep.
Football became more realistic as the game went on. Teams they became a little bit more even with one another, and it was a hard-fought victory. It did come down to the wire, like you said, Dan. Plenty of nail-biting moments throughout the game. But yeah, when you're watching this Chargers team move this ball down the field, keep converting third down after third down, yeah, you'd think that this score would have been a lot higher.
And this is a lopsided part. You mentioned the time of possession of those drives. 36 minutes to 23:57 in favor of the Chargers, Jake. 36 minutes of time of possession to 23. They had 200 more yards of passing offense, 334 versus 133, and just lost the rushing offensive numbers, 126 to 90. I mean, against that defense, other than some could say potentially like they had some issues running the ball, which we'll get to, like they did everything with relative ease, it seemed. And you mentioned observations and statements. Jake, number 13 overall, Mr. Rashawn Slater in the flesh had himself a day.
Yeah, there's two numbers that are relevant to Rashawn Slater in this game. First one is 49. He had 49 pass blocking attempts in this game. This other number covers 4 other individual stats, but it's all the same number, and that's 0. 0 sacks given up, 0 pressures allowed, 0 quarterback hurries. Rashawn Slater was Chase Young wanted to get in the club yesterday, but he couldn't make it past the bouncer. So Chase Young really said, well, I can't get past this guy, so I'm going to have to go around to the back of the club and see if I can find a way to get in that way. He literally forced Chase Young to go to the opposite side to try to rush Justin Herbert. Wow.
And all of the people who were talking about, like, Chase Young's a different man, he's grown up, not going to get the best of him this year. Like, and I mentioned this earlier, it's hard to judge and to grade, like, an offensive lineman versus a defensive line because, like, they'll have, 50, 60, 70 snaps, and if a defensive lineman gets 1 sack, 1 strip, fumble, whatever, like, that's what's going to be on SportsCenter. That's the highlight, not the other 49 times the offensive lineman held his ground. Rashawn Slater literally gave up nothing. And you see some of these stills of the pocket that Justin Herbert had the last game.
Oh, my goodness.
I literally cannot remember the last time a Chargers quarterback, let alone Justin Herbert, a Chargers quarterback had a pocket like that.
Well, we were saying that it was pretty incredible for what Justin Herbert was able to do in his rookie season, given the circumstances of how bad his offensive line played last year. And you all want to say, hey, what does a Chargers quarterback look like when he's got a clean pocket consistently? It was pretty well shown yesterday on Sunday.
It was, and the weird part, remember this was kind of an odd thing that I heard some people saying at the end of last year. Well, what Justin Herbert did this year isn't sustainable. And a lot of these were like off-platform throws, high risk. And, what happens if he has time? Is he not going to throw as well when he has time to throw the ball? I'm like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Well, fast forward, he had time, has a competent offensive line, and is just throwing dimes everywhere. And without some of his wide receivers drops, like the Mike Williams easy touchdown for Mike Williams in the end zone, or the easy Keenan Allen drop that is so not like him. We saw several drops. The dude would have had 400 yards, 4 touchdowns in a blink of an eye. I mean, he was that good. But what's more important is he was that good against that team, Jake. Like, nobody expected Justin Herbert to light up the Washington football team. Like, we hoped, we thought it could be possible, but did you expect it? We were worried about this. We were worried about this game.
I mean, it was a tough matchup, dude. I mean, that front four is no joke, even given the success that the Chargers ended up having against it. And yes, they had their wins against the secondary. William Jackson still was all over the place on multiple receivers, ended up, getting the interception on Justin Herbert. But yeah, this ended up being a lot closer than it ended up being. And when Ryan Fitzpatrick went out of the game, I'll admit, Dan, I'm like, oh no, this is actually not what I want to see for the Chargers.
I thought the same thing.
Because you haven't spent time scouting him. You haven't been practicing against Taylor Heinicke. And for anybody that loves Ryan Fitzmagic, and that's totally fine. But to me, given the fact that what Taylor Heinicke did in last year in a playoff game, I mean, the stars weren't going to be that bright for this kid to start off the regular season. I'm pretty sure he was probably chomping at the bit to get in there regardless. But yeah, that got me a little bit worried because that was a shot of adrenaline that the Washington football team needed at that point in time. And, you see those bad coverages, bad play by Nasir Adderley, a miraculous catch by Terry McLaurin, but then
I don't know how he got that.
Nas gets burned on the very next play, and you feel the momentum starting to shift.
You've been there. We've all been there.
And hey, give the Chargers credit from the player standpoint, from the coaching standpoint, to pick themselves up and battle their way back and create the plays that they needed to do to win the game.
Chargers in this type of game fold every time the last few years. Every time.
No argument for me.
We see that happen every single time, and the Chargers just find a way to lose that game. And Brandon Staley said it in his post-game speech, I believe, where he kind of said, like, did you expect anything less? Like, all of it, our backs were against the wall. We got adversity. All of these things went the wrong way, and yet, like, we still found a way to win. And if we just kind of fast forward to, like, that late third and fourth quarter, there were so many things that went against the Chargers that would have ended this game any other year. And we don't even have to just isolate those, quarter and a half, but like the end of the half when Joey Bosa gets the roughing the passer on a, I guess, letter by the law, technically but like, come on, this is football. And then he gets another one later, and then the ridiculous phantom roughing the passer again. And then he gets the ridiculous freaking throw in the end zone that should not have been a fumble. And then, like, there were these constant things happening. And even Chargers on that last drive, they get an offensive holding, and they're backed up. I think it was 2nd and 20, I believe. And Chargers just decide, screw it, we're chucking it, and they get it. It was nice to see when the game was on the line. So let's just take that last 6 minutes, last 10 minutes or so. Chargers defense held up. Special teams held up. And the offense, when given the opportunity to close out the game, didn't give the Washington football team another chance. I think there were 4 straight third down conversions by Justin Herbert on that drive. 1 to Jared Cook. I think it was 1 to Mike Williams. Like 2 to Keenan Allen. The Keenan Allen one, I think, is on 3rd and 16 or something. 3rd and 13, he got 16. I mean, unreal stuff. And to be able to line up in victory formation when you had the ball at 6 minutes left, like that's what winning teams do. And I don't think I remember seeing a time in which the Chargers have done that in at least a couple seasons.
No.
Closing out a game, 6 minutes, churn the clock, end it, game over.
No. The 3rd and 16 is what I wanted to reference, Dan. And I'm glad you brought it up, because that is a situation where the Chargers actually started on that drive at their own 18, and they got it down to 2nd and 6, and then it was an unfortunate holding call, which backed it up 10 yards, and you're thinking to yourself, oh my God, now it's 3rd and 16 from the 12. And normally this would have been a conservative
we know.
Run up a run on a 3rd and 16 just to try to get some type of positive yardage, a screen pass, or it's probably getting picked off. But no, give it to 13, and he ends up taking it and getting a first down and keeps this drive alive. I mean, that was insanity. The way that Justin Herbert was throwing the damn ball throughout the entirety of the day was insanity. I mean, it looked effortless for him, but he was firing bullets all morning long.
And he was throwing passes not just with like finesse, but also with force. Like he threw the bullets, like you said, but that touch pass he threw to Guyton in the first quarter, or maybe it's the second quarter, I think it's like a 30-yard throw where he just lobbed it up like a raindrop. I'm like, this is unreal. And look, a lot of people were saying, like, from Washington football standpoint, when they're fans of that team, we got Chase Young. Wait till you see what he looks like against us. Sophomore slump. Blah 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 blah. Whatever you want to say as a competitive component, like Justin Herbert's that dude, and for him to come out the way he did, and just for the most part dominate. Again, he made one bad decision on the read on the back corner that got picked off by William Jackson. Other than that, he was almost perfect. So that's what Chargers offense looks like, with a competent offensive line, with a quarterback and with receivers that are healthy. Switching over to defense, Jake, how refreshing was it to see Mr. Derwin James back on the field? Talk about, I got your back. Remember when I think he said that in the pregame where he went up to Justin Herbert before the game started and he was like, I got your back. You do you, basically. How many times did we see the defense stand up for this offense? And that's because of Derwin James. Like he's that guy.
How about just the team stand up for Derwin James himself when he almost got that interception very early in the game, when it was the exact formation that Staley had talked about, because on that particular play, they put Derwin in the slot. They moved Chris Harris back to the safety position, and terrific coverage by Derwin throughout the entirety of that play, and almost got the interception, which probably would have thrown the team into a damn frenzy if he came down with it. But as Brandon Staley said when he was giving out game balls after the game was complete, he said, this is a different movie with this guy on the field. And that's not a lie.
Nope. No, so game balls were given out to Keenan Allen, to Justin Herbert, and to Derwin James. Other than those three, and also, of course, you saw that leadership moment by Justin Herbert, also giving a game ball to the first victory of Brandon Staley's career as a head coach. You got a game ball as well. Other than those game balls, stars of the game, who else do you give game balls to?
I think what Mike Williams did,
yes, thank you,
was 100% granted for it, because Mike Williams looked really, really solid on Sunday, especially the typical slant pattern that you just keep running once you get the ball. You keep running across the field. No, Mike Williams literally just put his foot in the ground, turned the other direction, and then totally carried it for about another 10 yards. Totally fooled the DB on which direction he was going. He looked sharp. And for a guy who didn't have, much talk about him during the preseason, because for a certain period of time he wasn't practicing, and of course we're all up in arms about the Tyron Johnson situation and the way that Joshua Palmer's looking in the preseason,
and he can't run routes.
You kind of forgot about it. But I'll say this, Dan. I mean, to that question, maybe this is another way of Joe Lombardi figuring out how to utilize a player properly, because the criticism on that, because I know you want to touch on that as more than anything. Can he win the 50-50 balls? Yes. Has that traditionally been his bread and butter since he's been with this team? Yes. But when you have a coaching staff that can put your players in a position to not only be the best versions of themselves, but to win individual matchups, this was a clear-cut example of this. Keenan Allen, we know what he can do. In my opinion, there's nothing that Keenan Allen can do when he's on offense. Justin Herbert, you got a good glimpse of that. I mean, it already looks like it's going to be, it could possibly be a step above what we had last year. Maybe not as many touchdowns, but just progression for a young quarterback. It looks like it's already off to the right start. But for Mike Williams, for a guy who's in a contract year, who absolutely needs it, I don't think you could have, aside from another touchdown, that you couldn't have asked for a better start. There was one point, I think, before the half, or at least maybe by the early point in the third quarter, where Mike Williams had 5 receptions for 56 yards. That's pretty much what he used to average last year in 2020. That was around what he averaged.
That's a Michael Thomas half.
Exactly. So to see him be second on the team in receiving yards, which is something that we probably would have always expected him to be behind Keenan Allen, but 8 for 82, averaged 10.3 yards per catch, and got the game-winning touchdown. It was beautiful. And by the way, short thing, on that final touchdown that we had, the formation looked eerily similar to the 2-point conversion in Kansas City in 2018 when the Chargers won the game, because you had overload on one side and you had Mike Williams one-on-one down below. And like Mike Williams does in certain short situations, he wins those matchups.
Mike Williams, man, 8 for 82 and a touchdown. Arguably could have had a second touchdown if he would have brought that sluggo route down. Keenan Allen, 9 for 100. Jared Cook, 5 for 56. Guyton, 3 for 49. KJ Hill coming in clutch with 3 grabs as well. You saw it kind of spread around all over the place. So you had Mike Williams. Look, I'm going to go out on a limb here. Obviously, we can give it to Rashawn Slater, so we'll put that aside. Corey Linsley, I think, could get one too. I'm giving one to Asante Samuel for the early gaffe that he had on the one pass interference call, which was pass interference. It was pass interference, kind of a little ticky-tack, but it was pass interference. I'll give it to him. The way he responded with physicality and was able to disrupt, I want to say at least 3 pass attempts and run attempts to where, like, he is ending drives single-handedly, pass breakups, forced fumbles along with Kyzir White. He looked all of first-round talent, Asante Samuel Jr. And for a rookie corner, when the opposing offense knows you're a rookie corner, they're going to hunt you down. And he wanted all of that smoke and more. And Derwin James even said it. Aside from the one play, Asante Samuel Jr. looked great. So, game ball, Asante Samuel Jr. The nice thing, Jake, we can keep going, but the nice thing is there are so many guys who performed well today. And normally, you'll see like 3 or 4. You'll see Keenan Allen and Justin Herbert ball out. And Joey Bosa has 3 sacks. But then that's kind of it. This team won as a team playing complementary football. And you saw that with how many guys contributed. I think that's one of the biggest takeaways I had. How many guys contributed to this win?
Yeah, collectively, normally we go on here and we do our good, bad, and the ugly. There's no way I'm picking an ugly in this game because there's not one defined. You could say whatever you want. You could bring up the Nasir Adderley aspect.
Interior defensive line could be better, I guess.
Whatever. Yes, that could definitely be better. But collectively, when they needed it, maybe if this resulted in a loss, you could probably go the other way with it, just depending on how you're feeling. But yeah, there's definitely some things that you're going to have to work on, and in a short fashion too, because you got a game on Sunday that offense is going to be a lot different than the Chargers only allowing 14 passes to be completed through fourth quarters. I mean, this is going to be a much different test for the Chargers come Sunday when they go up against Dallas. But yeah, I mean, collectively as a team, Dan, to your point, they did what they needed to do. And not everybody's going to ball out. And yeah, you have your standouts that we've already talked about here at nauseum. Like you said, we could collectively give a game ball to the entire offensive line, because even when Brian Bulaga went down with his injury, Storm Norton didn't perform terribly when he stepped in there. And that's when he had Chase Young coming on his side. So he did not play terrible. Whatsoever. So, yeah, it was just overall, it was a great team win, and it was good for the Chargers to answer a lot of questions that they were facing in the offseason very, very early.
Yeah, at all levels. I mean, kicking game was good. There were no back-breaking special teams gaffes. You saw the linebacking core look very good. Drew Tranquill was a surprise where we didn't see him play much. You saw him a ton on special teams, which huge. Him, Mark Webby saw on special teams a lot. Chris Rumph saw on special teams a lot. Line, overall, defensive line looked good. You saw sparks from Uchenna Nwosu, Kyzir White. You saw stuff from, obviously, just from Joey Bosa. You saw Linval Joseph come in and get some stuff behind the line of scrimmage. Like, defensive line was adequate. They could have been better on the interior, but overall, pretty good. Nasir Adderley could have been good. He honestly was up and down. He had some good plays, had some not so good plays, but I think he'll get better. Corner play, I thought, was outstanding. Even the Nasir Adderley play that, like, he somehow missed the pick. Like, he was right there. Like, he had the right read on it. Receivers in total, receivers did great. Gotta work on catching the football. Like, I know we're spoiled with how great Justin Herbert throws it, but I think that could have been a Russ uncharacteristic thing. Like, a lot of the stuff that we saw that were not the greatest, like, they could improve. And we're not going to see Keenan Allen dropping an easy 5-yard out. Like, it's just not going to happen. Joey Bosa, I honestly, I can't really blame him for either of those.
I know who you can blame for. I know who you can blame for at least one of them.
Zebras.
Well, you can blame Tom Brady from 2008 because that's his rule.
Okay.
That's his rule. So, and then you can blame the Zebras. But yeah.
And honestly, thank you to all of the Chargers fans, the Bolt fam who showed up in DC. Jake, did you see all the powder blue?
That was impressive. I wasn't expecting a show out like that.
I was not expecting that at all. Sticking through the sewer bust that happened at FedEx Field. I don't know if folks caught that, but a sewer line busted over the seats in one of the sections at that stadium. And folks wonder why the Chargers left San Diego to go to SoFi. You want a nicer stadium. I mean, thank you to the fans. Thank you to the coaching staff. As Austin Ekeler said it before, right after the game, I think he said, like, thank you so much for believing in us, Chargers fans. That coaching staff makes this entire team feel different. And I know, Jake, there's a little bit there where you were a little June and gloom and you felt we were losing this game because same old Chargers things were happening for good reason. Like, I get it. But this team showed more resilience, and when it was needed to happen and when the game was in balance, they took over. And I think that's what was most exciting for me was the way they finished. Can the Chargers finish a game? How many times we talked about the one-score losses? And just so happened, we did. Chargers escape on the road against a playoff team, win 20-16. And Jake, we had a lot of people that were excited afterwards. Did you see Chargers Twitter?
They were up in arms with excitement. And they should be. Why the hell not? They should be.
They were pretty excited. And for folks who have not been following along on this journey with Jake and I since the beginning, we have decided, thanks to the votes that you have given us, to bring back one of the most fun and entertaining parts of what we do. Jake, we have brought back the Chargers Unleashed Hotline.
Like this.
And
I can't wait to see what this is going to be like. I mean, obviously, this is going to be great to do this for the first win of the season. But when the Chargers lose their first game, I can't wait to answer people on the hotline for this. Actually, I just sit back and listen and laugh because they're just great to listen to.
Oh, man. Okay, so for folks who do not know how this works, Chargers fans, you can call into the Chargers Unleashed hotline at 323-374-5651. Again, 323-374-5651. Call into the Chargers Unleashed hotline. You can leave a voicemail with your predictions, with your takes, with your frustrations, excitement, what have you. And we will be playing them on upcoming episodes. And we'll be reacting to them live. And how this works, I get the voicemails. Jake does not get to hear them until live on the show. And Jake will provide instant reactions. So, Jake, without further ado, we have to tell the good friends who Chargers Unleashed is sponsored by. So let's say Chargers Unleashed Hotline is a proud, fun place. It is brought to you by our good friends over at Brewery X up in Anaheim. Amazing spirits, amazing beer. Check them out. Awesome service outside. They got great food as well. We actually, Jake, my wife had a bachelorette party this weekend.
Was it Brewery X?
For one of her friends. And she asked, like, hey, can I bring some drinks over to the party? And I was like, hey, you should bring some of the Brewery X stuff. She's like, oh, yes. So she brought
Did you have her take the seltzers?
Yup. So she brought some of the seltzers, and she gets there, and like 3 of the ladies that were there were like, oh my gosh, you got Brewery X? No way. So she proceeds to tell them the story. She's like, man, one of those drinks they got there will really mess you up. And Chris is like, oh, the jungle juice. They're like, you brought some?
I knew it.
Yup. Needless to say, they had quite the time. So yes, shout out Brewery X up in Anaheim. Sponsor the show. Great friends, great beer, great food. Check them out. Brewery X up in Anaheim. All right, Jake. Without further ado, the first voicemail on Chargers Unleashed Hotline for 2021 season comes from none other than friend of the show.
Chargers win! Scared ball loses games. The Chargers did not play scared ball. They came out throwing with just 4 minutes left, neither running out the clock, and they came and they got a W. Woo! Let's go. Bolts up.
Friend of the show, Tyler Lawrence, the Master Bolt, calling into the show for the first voicemail.
Goodness. Good to hear Tyler's voice again. Man, Tyler sounded like this was like a game that was at 5 p.m. and he was already in the weeds with drinks, man. That's great to have that type of emotion at around 1:30 on a Sunday after a 10 a.m. game. I think Tyler's emotions speak for a lot of Charger fans out there.
Oh yeah, look, this was a roller coaster 3 hours for Chargers fans, and for how many times we saw this team seemingly lose this game, for them to come out and find a way to get it done. Like, I kind of felt like I lost my voice for a few minutes there, and listening to Tyler, like, it felt the same way. Like, all of us were in our mood. All of us were in our feelings. All of us were like, what the hell did we just see? Like, this is different.
Tyler was Ric Flairing the shit out of that voicemail. That was awesome.
Thank you, Tyler, for calling in. Moving on, Jake. Friend of the show. You may have heard this name a time or two in years past. But let's talk to our good friend from Lincoln, Nebraska.
Hey guys, this is Brandon from Lincoln, Nebraska. Couldn't be more excited about the Chargers' first win of the season, 1-0. And great start, new look. Can't wait to see what happens. Have a good one. Later.
Short, sweet, to the point. Perfect. First off, great to hear Lincoln, Nebraska calling in again. It's been a minute since we
Shout out
chatted.
Brandon.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I mean, you can't make it any clearer than that. Excited for the win. You could tell it's a different type of a feeling. It's a new look for this team, for the way that they play, the way that they execute. It gives you feelings of encouragement. Is it one game? Yes. Is it overreaction Monday? Yeah, but who cares? Who cares? That's what garners the name Overreaction Monday. There may be a huge reality check come Sunday, but for right now, be in your happiness, Chargers fans. Be in your feelings. It was a nice way to start off the 2021 NFL season.
Yes, whether you're in Lincoln, whether you're in DC or in LA or in Cambodia, the Chargers won against a playoff team, which they typically don't do. The Chargers finished a game. They typically don't do that. And they overcame adversity when seemingly they should have lost. They found a way to win, and their coaching staff put them in positions to succeed. And wouldn't you know it, damn it, they actually won the game and ran out the clock. You just don't see that. And so I think, like, a lot of people, it reminds me of like that Will Ferrell moment where he's like, I don't know what to do with my hands. Like, Chargers fans don't know what to do with this. Like, what do I do with this feeling? Like, do I go to the casino? Do I shower it off? Like, what do I do?
Well, you're gonna put it like that. First off, shower. Definitely do that. Don't be one of those. You know, for my superstitious people out there, trust me, I feel you because I definitely believe in those superstitions. But don't do what Dan just said. Don't like, I'm not gonna take a shower until they lose again. No, don't do that. And definitely, if you're going to the casino, be responsible.
Only bring a certain amount of cash and don't let yourself take any more out. I've learned that lesson, or else you're going to spend way too much money at the casino and you'll not feel good about it later. All right, so Jake, we got through the first two voicemails of the Chargers Unleashed Hotline brought to you by our good friends at Brewery X. We talked about stars of the game ball. We talked about Justin Herbert, Rashawn Slater, all of the good, all of the things that they could improve. Any other kind of key takeaways you got from this game that maybe you were not expecting?
That I wasn't expecting. I'm sure we probably had already covered it. It was just the way that this offense was able to move the ball. Yeah, they had their spurts, they had their stalls. Especially, I would love to see better production in the red zone, because as many trips as the Chargers made down there, and only come away with 20 points when they should have came away with at least another 14, was a little bit disappointing. But to see them move the ball in between the 20s the way they did against this defense that has made some upgrades in free agency, specifically in the secondary, that was impressive. That was impressive to me for a first-time head coach to come out and execute like that, to make a statement like that, for a quarterback who, again, I will never, ever, ever criticize about whether or not he needs preseason or not. Not that I ever was doing that in the first place, but I think that book has been pretty much closed at this point. Maybe so much for the offensive line. Maybe that's probably what I haven't given enough praise for. I know everything went to Rashawn Slater, and rightfully so, but all the way across the board, Odea Boucher, Corey Linsley especially, Matt Filer, Brian Bulaga, even when he was in there, was still holding his own. But even when Storm Norton came in, and he was one of two guys, I think, that ended up giving up 2 sacks throughout the game. Outside of that, he played really well. So collectively as a unit, and we're talking about an offensive line here that was overhauled in one season with 4 new starters along this line. And for them not getting much of the opportunity that we were hoping that they were going to get to gel during training camp, during preseason, they look damn good against arguably the best front 4 in the entire league.
I'll say this. If this is what a rusty Chargers team looks like,
give me a polished mid-season form of that.
Sign me up for that. Sure, please, more of that. And shout out to all of the Washington football team fans. I heard there were some great fans in the stands there. There's always some knuckleheads, but for the most part, most of them are very respectful. The amount of people that I started seeing give Justin Herbert his praise and this team praise for just going out and winning. Like, I don't know. I'm not sure why Justin Herbert surprised them, but regardless, he showed up. And to see everyone on the opposing side nationally, you hear Daniel Jeremiah talk about Justin Herbert being a front runner for MVP. You hear all this national exposure about the Chargers offensive line and Rashawn Slater and Derwin James, blah, 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 blah. It's just nice to see all of the things that you and I have both, as well as a lot of the Chargers fans and podcasts and the team themselves. There have been so much excitement and the hype for this team and how things are quote unquote different. And there's been a lot of talk. This was the first time where we actually got to see it. And so I think it was really gratifying and rewarding to me to just see the team do it, to go out and execute. Happy for Drew Tranquill, given the horrific injury he had last year. Happy for Derwin James. I mean, I'm happy for Nazir Adderley, who's gone through a bunch of injuries. Chris Harris, who was injured a lot last year. Brandon Staley, who's gone through turmoil in his life. Joey Bosa, Justin Herbert, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. There's so many guys who I just feel good for. They deserve this victory. Austin Ekeler. Come on. There's so many good stories that came out of this game. And I just feel good to be covering this team and seeing all the work they put in actually being showcased and us getting the benefit of it come week 1. Chargers win 20-16, and the Chargers sit atop the AFC West, at least for one more week.
Kansas City will have something to say about that, for sure.
Well, and the Broncos.
And the Broncos, yeah. So they're not necessarily.
For all we know, we're all going to be atop the AFC West.
Not necessarily atop. Call it what it is. They're tied for first place, but a great first performance given all the elements that were questioned going into this game.
Yes. So for Jake Hefner, this is Dan Wolkenstein with Chargers Unleashed. Thank you guys so much for joining us and tuning in. Again, if you have not already, feel free to like and subscribe to us on anywhere you get your podcasts. Also on YouTube, subscribe, give us a like. Hit those bell notifications so you know when we have any upcoming special guest episodes, ding, 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 as well as any other recaps and previews for weeks to come. You can find Jake Hefner at Jake T. Hefner on Twitter. Jake, are you shaved? I can't tell.
Yes. Specifically for the reason that you couldn't say anything else about my beard. So.
Very good. You can find myself at Chargers Homer on Twitter. Again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We love doing this with you guys. Thank you for all of the people who have given us calls on the voicemail and interacting with us on all social medias. We will talk to you here in a few days when we get to preview the Week 2 matchup versus the Dallas Cowboys at home at SoFi. I'll be there in attendance. Man, cannot wait for that one. Guys, thank you so much for joining, and we will talk to you next time on Chargers Unleashed.